glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here and so glad to see all of you from different parts of the great United States of America. And this is an important webinar, I think. I mean, Social Security's been in the news and for very good reasons, and we need to pay some attention to what's going on. Eleanor said I should introduce myself. I've been a volunteer with the AARP Maryland for 5 years now. And before that, I worked as a lawyer for the Maryland legislature, and I worked on economic crimes, but also real estate and housing issues, family law, drunk driving, and other traffic safety issues. So, sort of a wide ranging, I was a generalist, I guess, but I really enjoyed it. Um, and then I came to AARP beginning in 2020 to focus on fraud, but I've also just become really interested in Social Security and Medicare because not just because of the politics surrounding those issues, but just because these are really amazing programs. So before I get started sharing my screen, I just want to say, that this is a good time. I'm glad you all are here, but, let's take a moment to just I don't know, feel a little gratitude that we have this program. This program began in 1935. That's when it was initiated. And our country, people talk about how divided the country is today. Well, 1935, in the aftermath of the Great Depression, I bet people were pretty divided then. But somehow they came together and the federal government came together to initiate this program to help people who had spent a lifetime of working and who deserved some security when they finished working. And before that, that was completely unheard of. And it was because so many people suffered during the Great Depression that there was a groundswell of support for Social Security. It was 5 years later that the first check was issued in 1940. So in 85 years, Social Security has never, ever missed a payment to anyone. And the numbers have grown over the years. The life expectancy has grown over the years, and still we've kept up. Social Security is facing financial challenges right now, but this is not the first time that that's happened. 40 years ago, we were in the exact same boat that we're in now, where there were discussions frequently in the news about how Social Security was going to have to reduce benefits unless Congress did something. Congress did do something. It was under the Reagan administration, about 1 year before the program was projected to run out of money. So the challenges that we're going to talk about today are serious, but they can be manageable. But we have to have the fortitude to address them. The other thing I just want you to consider is, given social media and just the world we're living in with the internet, can you imagine somebody introducing a bill to start Social Security in 2025? And where would that go? How would that bill fare? And maybe it would do great. I don't know. I'm not here to project, but 1935 was the right time. And our families, our predecessors have all benefited because of the steps that people took in 1935 to try to secure the lives for people once they'd spent a lifetime of working. So I just a little bit on a soapbox, but I just want to put that out there because there's a lot to be grateful for here, a lot to be concerned about, but also a lot to be grateful for. So with that, I will start sharing my screen.
Nice job, Karen. And I also uploaded a picture of you with the celebrating 90 years of Social Security this week with the cake that we had in the honor.
Oh, yes. Fabulous. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm screen sharing it, but somehow I'm not seeing the right screen. Okay.
Yeah, we see your home screen.
Yeah, that's not good because I set this all up. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Oh, hallelujah. I am so grateful that you can see my screen.
Oh my.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just make sure.
Okay.
Okay, good, good, good. Yep.
So, yes, Social Security. This webinar is about making Social Security, the program itself, secure because we earned it. So let me just again say from the outset, we're not talking about an entitlement. We're not talking about a grant program. We're talking about basically a national annuity. You put money into a trust fund. You put a certain amount through payroll taxes into a trust fund, and you keep doing that for at least 10 years, for as long as you're working. Social Security takes the highest 35 years of your salary, and from that determines what your Social Security payment will be. Once you qualify and claim your Social Security benefits, you get them for the rest of your life. So that's really important. And I also want to say because we qualify for Social Security payments after 10 years of work, can you think there are not that many other retirement programs out there where you can qualify for benefits with only 10 years of work? But Social Security is one of them. And because it is not tied to the stock market, because it's a trust fund that earns interest on its own, what happens in the stock market doesn't have a huge effect on Social Security. So, again, more things to be grateful for. So, we're going to be talking about how to keep Social Security secure, what AARP's principles are, because AARP is on the front lines fighting to keep Social Security and to get it secure, not just now, but to keep it secure for the next 90 years, for the next 100, 150 years. We want your grandchildren and your great grandchildren to qualify and receive Social Security benefits, just like a lot of us on this call are receiving Social Security benefits. We'll talk about some of the basics of the program. And I want to present to you, as our audience, some proposed solutions and see what you think about how we can best protect Social Security. And then we'll talk about some resources if you want to do more research and engage in our campaign to keep Social Security the way that it has been for the last 90 years. So, like I said, it was created in 1935 and in the aftermath of the Great Depression. And the idea was that workers would contribute to a central trust fund managed by the government. Now, right now, the Social Security Trust Fund is projected to have a shortfall beginning in the year 2035, and that estimate varies depending on what blog you're reading, depending on what news source you're reading. Sometimes it's 2033, sometimes it's 2034, or 2035. But the idea is that the payments that are being made will exceed the income that is coming into the trust fund. And in order for everyone to continue to be paid, if no changes are made, all recipients would have their payments reduced by about 20%. So AARP and other advocates are asking Congress to please make changes to the program so that Americans can earn the full benefits, that they can get the full benefits that they have rightfully earned. So, yeah, I just said all this. So there you go. Now we're saying maybe the shortfall is by 2034. But as I said, that can vary depending on what news source you read, and also depending on projections. So we know it's going to be around then. Exactly when, no one has ever been able to land on that. So right now, here are some of the things that are creating challenges for the Social Security program. Retirees are living longer, for one. The birth rates in the United States of America are significantly lower than they were in 1935. But even with these challenges, Social Security can be stabilized. Now, for an example, in 1950, about 16 workers were paying into the Social Security Trust Fund through their payroll taxes for every single retiree who claimed benefits. Now we're looking at three workers paying into the Social Security Trust Fund for every retiree who claims benefits. Now, I said retirees are living longer and they're collecting payments for a greater number of years. And when you have fertility rates dropping at the same time, it doesn't take a lot to imagine the math that creates these challenges. But we had similar challenges in 1980, and we banded together to save Social Security and to keep it going for a good 40 years. And we can do that again. So, what are some of the principles that AARP has for protecting Social Security? We would like the federal government to look into long-term solvency. So, 40 years was pretty good in 1980. I want to say it was 83 when the changes were made. And let's just go back a second because in before 1983, the typical retirement age for Social Security was 1965. And you got full benefits. Your full retirement age was 1965. When one of the major changes that was made, which we are just now seeing come to fruition, is that the retirement age was increased from 65 to 67, but it was phased in. So a good swath of retirees were grandfathered in at the age of 65, and then people who were born later were not able to get full retirement benefits until they reached a certain age, starting at like 60, starting at 65 and then some months. And then we go to 66 and some months. And now anyone born in 1960 or later, their full retirement age is 67. There is no 65. There's no younger than 67. It has to be 67. So that was one of the things that created solvency for Social Security for the last 40 years, that change. The other thing is that AARP is advocating for a stable foundation for retirement. So let's make Social Security stable. Let's not tether it to something um, that is fluid or that can change or that can rise and fall depending on recession or those sorts of things. Social Security should protect those most in need. A good segment of people, even though Social Security was not intended to replace all retirement income, a good segment of people depend on Social Security for their entire income. And I know when my dad passed away and my mother got his Social Security payment, I mean, she wasn't getting her own retirement income. So that was the income. And I mean, she did have some savings, but that was the income that bought the groceries, that put gas in the car. And that's true for a lot of people. We think that Social Security should address economic and demographic changes. If it looks like the birth rate's not going to be increasing in the future, then we need to secure the program so that the birth rates don't have such a huge impact. We want to reward work. If you've worked 20, 30, 40 years, you deserve to be rewarded for that. And you deserve to have some measure of financial security after you reach an age where it just doesn't make sense to work, 9 to 5, particularly in a strenuous job anymore. We want to ensure that workers' payments are clearly defined and that they can't be outlived. Right now, when you qualify for Social Security, when you apply for those benefits and you get them for the rest of your life. So if you're 200 years old and you've applied for benefits, you're going to be getting benefits at 200 years old. Now, I don't know anybody who's done that yet, but there are people, we do have more centenarians who get Social Security. They are still getting their Social Security payments, and they should not have to worry that they're no longer going to get payments because they reach the age of 102 or 103. We want to keep protecting Social Security against inflation shifts, and we want to protect current beneficiaries and those who are nearing retirement. So, how does Social Security work? The basics is that workers earn payments through what are called FICA taxes. And FICA stands for the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. It's a tax that's paid by employers and employees, and it funds Social Security and Medicare. Now, here's another thing that I found out because of what a family member was going through. But in order to qualify for Medicare, where you're not paying the hospital premiums, you have to have at least 10 years of work, the same way you do for Social Security. So before I found that out because of my family member, I thought, once you reach 65, you apply. And remember, the age for Medicare qualification is still 65, regardless of the 67-year-old for retirement age for most people who are now looking at getting Social Security benefits. But I thought you reach 65, you apply for Medicare, and that was it. No, you need a work history of at least 10 years, just like with Social Security, in order to qualify for just what we call the Part B premium, which is, relatively small, and to go to the hospital without having to pay those hospital bills at all. Now, Social Security also, in addition to providing payments for retirees, Social Security also provides payments to individuals with disabilities. And if the person getting Social Security passes away, then they're survivors. Now, almost everyone contributes to the Social Security Trust Fund. And because these payments have come from money that you've earned, that's why it's important to protect them. And that's why we really at AARP we get our hackles up when people seem to imply that somehow Social Security is a gift or it's just, it's only for old people or no, it's not. Young people get Social Security benefits because the head of their household may have passed away. If you become disabled and you're in your 40s, you can qualify for Social Security benefits, as well as when you reach retirement age, and anytime from 62 up till 70, you can apply and get Social Security benefits. Your Social Security benefits are reduced if you apply at 62 up until your full retirement age. At full retirement age, you get your full benefit, but if you wait until age 70, you can get more, like up to 125% more of your benefit. And after you reach age 70, those increases stopped. So there's absolutely no advantage in waiting past age 70 to claim Social Security if that's what you decide that you want to do. But from 62, you can claim your benefits at age 62, and whenever you claim them, and you need to decide what time is right for you, you get them for the rest of your life. We want to make sure that that is still the case. Now, let's talk about Social Security in a typical state, and let's just say Maryland, because that's where I'm at. Um, so right now in Maryland, over 1 million people are getting Social Security payments. And the average Social Security payment for Maryland recipients is $2,048. And that can definitely vary depending on the state that you're in. Some states may be more, some states may be less. Now, let's look at how Maryland treats Social Security from a tax standpoint. Maryland is one of 40 states that does not tax Social Security. So there are only 10 states that do that. So, and I can't recall off the top of my head what those 10 states are, but it's likely that you're in a state that does not tax Social Security benefits. Now, the federal government does tax Social Security benefits if you exceed certain amounts of income. But most states, 40 of 50, do not tax Social Security benefits. Now, the impact of Social Security on Maryland's economy is huge. We are looking at $23.6 billion of annual economic impact in Maryland. Huge. And so we need Social Security and we need the people who earn Social Security to keep getting Social Security because it's one of the things that keeps our economic engine running. Social Security benefits provide at least 50% of the income for about 30% of 65 and older households in the state of Maryland. And again, that can vary depending on the state you're in. But here's an example based in Maryland. But what can we take away from this? The impact of Social Security is huge. It is critical. And if you remove Social Security, the state economy basically plummets. And who wants that? No one. So who receives Social Security? 69 million people in the United States. And in this country, 16 million people are kept out of poverty because they get Social Security benefits. Again, huge, because before Social Security came along, when you stopped working and you didn't get retirement, you were flirting with poverty. And the founder for AARP, Ethel Percy Andrews, she began AARP because she came across a teacher who had retired who could no longer afford to live in her house. She was literally living in a chicken coop. True story. So Social Security is critical for 69 million people, and it helps the country, and it helps all of us. So, the other thing that I want to mention that I've said before was that Social Security was always intended to be a safety net to provide some income. It was never intended to be the only source. But because of circumstances, people may end up using it as their only source, like my mom did. So let's talk about the future of Social Security. So ARP does a lot of frequent surveying and outreach to our members and just generally about how people feel about Social Security. And we keep coming up to the same conclusions. One, that the vast majority, almost 80% of Americans, believe that Social Security payments should not be reduced in any way. That's huge. So even though it's popular to talk about how divided the country is, there are ways in which we come together, and Social Security is one of them. 87% of people that we've surveyed, and these are national surveys, say that Congress should act now rather than waiting another 10 years, to find a solution. Let's address the issue now. And all political groups, no matter where people are on the political spectrum, agree that Social Security keeps people independent and financially secure. And what's wrong with that? Absolutely nothing. So let's talk about some possible solutions to protect Social Security. And I've just elected you all Congress. So we're going to go through some proposed solutions to protect Social Security that have come across over the years. And I want to see what you all think about some of these solutions and whether it makes sense for Congress to do one of these or maybe a combination of these solutions that I'm getting ready to start. So we're going to go through these one by one and keep in mind that there is likely not just one thing that will fully fund Social Security. And like, for example, in the 80s, the retirement age was a phased-in increase of the retirement age was implemented, but also payroll taxes were increased, and the ceiling for the income that is subject to Social Security was also increased. So maybe a combination of those things ends up being the solution, or maybe something we're not even thinking about. But let's just give it a shot. You all are in Congress. You all are brilliant. You all solve this problem. So here's solution one. Eliminate or raise the wage cap. In this year, people pay FICA taxes on the first $176,100 of wages. What if we remove that cap? Because there are people out there making 200,000, 300,000, half a million, millions of dollars. But even if you're as rich as Elon Musk, only $176,100 of his salary goes into the FICA trust fund to pay for Social Security, even though he's a billionaire, and I just bring him up as an example. But anyone making more than $176,100, it's only that first 176,100 that where taxes are taken to fund the trust fund. We call it a tax max. That's what we call it. So there are proposals that would help close this by either removing the cap altogether or setting it higher. Maybe the cap should be at 300,000 or 500,000. But there would also be a lower rate of return. Now, what would be the potential impact if we raised the tax max? Well, it could fund anywhere from 30 to 70% of the existing gap. And that depends on where the ceiling, if there's a ceiling, continual ceiling, depends on where that is. Or if the cap is removed, then that would create another set of circumstances. So it could extend the solvency of Social Security for several decades. That's a huge pro for this approach. What are the cons? One, it's a partial solution. Eliminating or increasing the cap alone would not fully solve the solvency issues that Social Security faces in the long term. In addition, if you don't have corresponding changes to the payments, then the increase contributions at the high end would result in very large Social Security checks for high income earners. So, what's your gut reaction to this solution? And Eleanor is going to monitor the chat for me. If you think it's doable, put a 1 in the chat. If you think it's not doable, put a 2 in the chat. And if you're unsure, put a 3 in the chat. And let's see what my Congress people think of this as a solution.
We're getting majority ones and a couple threes,
Okay.
but
Okay.
mostly one.
I feel like my tax dollars are working. Thank you, Congress people. So a majority of people like the idea of increasing the wage cap or maybe eliminating it altogether. Okay, that's good to know. Now let's talk about solution two, increase payroll taxes. So what am I talking about here? Maybe I should go to the slide and then we'll know, right? So right now, employees and employers split the payroll tax. Employers pay 6.2% on behalf of each employee in their business or concern, and employees pay the other 6.2. So employees and employers split the payroll tax 6.2% for each. And here's a possible solution. Maybe increase this payroll tax over time. And remember, right now in 2025, it's 6.2% on $176,100 of annual wages. So keep that in mind. So any parts of this solution that people are talking about relate to increasing the payroll tax over time and increasing the share that both employers and employees would take on. So let's talk about the pros and cons of this solution. If you raise the payroll tax, that would increase the funds available for Social Security, and that would help close the funding gap. So that's a great pro for this approach. Since payroll taxes are paid by both current employees and their employers, and we're talking about 183 million people right now, maybe we only need like a small increase, like maybe go from 6.2 to 6.4 or 6.2 to 6.5. Or maybe 6.2 to 7, but maybe no more than that. But a relatively small increase in the payroll tax for both employers and employees could have a great positive impact on Social Security finances. Those are the pros. What are the cons? Well, taxes, as we know, are regressive and they have an impact on the economy. So higher payroll taxes reduce disposable income. So that means employers will have less funds to invest in their businesses. Employees will have less disposable income. So that could potentially impact economic growth and also employment. If employers can't bring on as many people as they need because of outgoing costs like employer payroll taxes. This is also a partial solution, so that's another con. This would help, but it's probably not sufficient on its own to address long-term solvency issues. So maybe this would have to be combined with some other measure. Also, another con is that there's likely to be bipartisan political opposition to increasing taxes on all workers and their employers, even if the tax only applies to higher workers. So, what's your gut reaction to this solution? And again, in the chat, give me a one if you think it's doable. Give me a two if you think this is bad. I don't want to do this. And give me a three if you're unsure.
Two, two, three, two, another three, mostly two.
So people are not, so our Congress people, which is all of you, are not too crazy about this particular solution. Okay, good to know. Let's try another solution, another proposal. How about raising the full retirement age? We've been down this road before because we did it in the 80s. And like I said, because of the way in which it was phased in, we are just now seeing the full impact of that increase. But for instance, I started working in the 1980s, but because of the changes made to Social Security, my what I thought might have been my full retirement age at 65 became 66 and some months. And that happened to a lot of people in the 80s. So right now, the full retirement age is 67 for anyone born as of 1960 and or later. What if we raise the full retirement age for Social Security payments to 68, 69, or even 70? What if we kept the minimum retirement age where you qualify for Social Security benefits at age 62? Um, what what do you think about that? Now, before we start weighing in, I will say some people would say, well, why don't we just raise the minimum age from 62 to 64, or maybe make it 65 and keep the full retirement age where it is. The early claiming age of 62 still kind of needs to be preserved. Why? Because there are people out there doing really strenuous work or acquire significant health challenges because of the work they do. Think first responders, firefighters can experience huge health problems because of their work. People in the mining area, oil exploration, you can expand from there. So that's why keeping the early claiming age of 62 has been, people haven't suggested changing that because of these people who really may need to claim at 62. Um, so what are some pros? If you gradually increase the full retirement age, maybe it could be phased in the way it was 40 years ago. So maybe over the next 40 years, the full retirement age can go from 67 to 69 or maybe even 70. That could significantly extend the solvency of the Social Security Trust Fund by reducing the number of years payments are paid out and increasing the reduction in payments for an early retirement. As some people live longer, raising the full retirement age will align with the increased life expectancy that we have now. What are some of the cons? If you raise the full retirement age, that effectively reduces payments for all new retirees, not for people already getting benefits because they will have been grandfathered in. But if you're new, your retirement payments effectively going to be reduced either because you need to wait longer to get full payments or you're going to just decide to accept reduced payments if paid earlier. Um, Life expectancy has increased for the general population, but not for everyone, especially those with lower incomes. And as I said before, not everyone can work longer, especially if you're in a physically demanding job. So what do you think about raising the full retirement age as a solution? Again, if you think it's doable, give me a 1. If you think this is terrible, we don't want to do that, give me a 2. And if you're unsure, give me a 3.
Across the board. One, two, three.
It's kind of even.
Looks like it. Mm, there might be a few more threes than ones or twos.
Yeah, some of this is not so easy, is it?
Deborah said three, maybe minimum age, could be profession based.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Okay, that's 3 solutions. Let's talk about solution number 4. Reducing payments for high income earners. Okay. So we changed the payment formula so that if you earn over a certain amount, then you get less money. Or maybe the amount that you can acquire is capped. Like for example, right now, if the highest 35 years of your income is average, you can get on a monthly basis like over $5,000 a year from Social Security, and that amount can vary. What if that was changed so that you got less money, so that no matter what you earned, you could only get, like the maximum could only be $4,000? What if we based payments on income and assets at your retirement age instead of what was paid into Social Security? So instead of taking the highest 35 years of your income, we base your Social Security retirement benefit on what you earned at the time that you were ready to retire and claim Social Security. What are your income and assets at that point? And let's just, admit that it's likely to be less under those circumstances. So the way that Social Security was set up was that even people with lower wages receive lower Social Security payments overall. They get a larger proportion of their contributions back. That there's a formula that determines what your payment's going to be, and that's how the payment was designed. Some proposals would change the payment formula to return even less money proportionally. Or there could be means testing. So, what's the potential impact of reducing payments for high income earners? Let's talk about the pros. If you reduce payments to those who are less dependent on Social Security, because if you're a millionaire, do you really need that Social Security payment? I mean, you earned it, but do you really need it? Of course not. You've got millions of dollars and. So if you reduce those payments to people who really aren't dependent on Social Security, who are less dependent, that can be done without impacting their quality of life, and the savings to the trust fund could be huge. This approach would also make the system more progressive so that people who need payments the most would be the ones getting them. What are some of the cons? Reducing or even eliminating payments for high income earners would be seen as unfair because what's high income? What if you make $500,000 but you're heavily leveraged in debt, and so you find yourself spending $450,000 a year because of all this debt that you've acquired? Maybe you need Social Security and you earned it, so why shouldn't you get it? I can see people saying that. It would also really undermine Social Security's popularity because it would start looking more like an entitlement and less like an earned benefit. And, you can see people sort of saying, I'm not going to support Social Security because I make $350,000 a year. Why should I bother? I'm not going to be getting anything out of it. So, what's your gut reaction to this solution, my Congress people? If you think it's doable, give me a one. If you think this is a terrible idea, give me a two. And if you're not sure, give me a three.
Now, this is a bit mixed, but it looks like three is the most popular answer.
Huh. Well, I don't blame you for being unsure because because it's a complicated question for sure. Okay, why don't we go to solution five then? Since we're unsure, we're becoming more unsure as we consider these things. Using other funds. How about we use money from the U.S. General Fund? Right now, Social Security is funded through FICA taxes, which go into a trust fund. Those trust funds earn, millions, if not billions of dollars in interest because of the way in which they're invested. And Social Security does not depend on general tax dollars, like when you pay your income taxes. That money's not going to the Social Security Trust Fund. It's your payroll taxes that are going to the trust fund. What about some other forms of income, such as investments? Or maybe invest in the private market and use those returns to help pay for payments. Of course, if the private market's not doing that well, then you could end up losing you end up losing a lot of bucks, but maybe not. So Social Security is self-funded, as I said. No other funds are used to pay Social Security payments. So, we need to remember that because if you read some news sources that are just completely wrong, they talk about how the general fund is being used to pay Social Security or general tax. They're not. They never have been. But right now Social Security is in trouble, so maybe we should tap into general fund sources for that. Also, if you use those tax dollars, then you're getting income from workers who do not earn income through wages. Because some people earn a lot of money, but they're not considered wages. And so they're not paying into Social Security because they're not paying payroll taxes. Well, if we use other funds, we can maybe capture some of those people. What if we created a private market investment fund to help Social Security? And lawmakers maybe could borrow initial deposits, which could be paid back later as the investment fund grew over time. So, what are some of the pros for this potential solution? If you use general funds, that would provide a quick source of funding, and Congress would not have to make the politically difficult choice. And you all are Congress now, so you have an idea of how difficult this could be. But Congress would not have to make the choice of raising taxes or cutting payments. But what are some of the cons? Diverting money from the general fund would increase the federal deficit. It would reduce funding for other programs, probably both. The approach would also face significant political opposition because, again, it's starting to look like an entitlement now, not an earned benefit. And it involves adding to already high debts and deficits of reallocating existing resources from other priorities. So we have a deficit. This solution could add to the deficit, but maybe it's worth it to protect Social Security. So what do you think? If you think that this makes sense and it's doable, give me a one. If you don't think this is a good option, give me a two. And if you're unsure, give me a three.
1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Looks like 2 is the most popular answer.
Ah, okay. Cool. Well, I guess you all need to run for re-election now, on or something. So let's let's continue on. But thank you so much for those of you who participated and weighed in. But I hope it gives you an idea of what our federal lawmakers are faced with when trying to figure out what's going on here. And let me just say something else. Um, the life expectancy, I mentioned this before, has significantly changed, but let me give you an idea of how much it has changed. One of the one of the things that made Social Security doable was that by the time the retirement age, the full retirement age was 65. But most people in 1935 weren't expected to live until 65. So they contribute to the fund because through payroll taxes, but the chances of them actually getting benefits from the fund was significantly lower in 1935 than it is in 2025. In 1935, the life expectancy for white males was 61. For white females, and in 1935, most of them weren't getting payroll taxes because they weren't in the workforce. Their life expectancy age was 65. For African American males, the life expectancy in 1935 was significantly lower at 51.1 years, and for African American females, it was significantly lower at 56.5. So you have all these people paying into the trust fund in 1935 and succeeding years, but with a life expectancy of only 61, your chances of getting full retirement benefits were not nearly as likely. Let's fast forward to the latest life expectancy data that I could find, which is in 2017. The life expectancy for white males is 76.4 years. For white females, it's 81.2, and now there's significantly more females in the workforce in 2017 than there was in 1935. For African American males, the life expectancy has increased to 71.9 years, and for African American females, it's increased to 78.5 years. So, again, that's one reason why the math is not working, why there's such challenging math, because in 1935, significantly more people would be paying into the fund than would be taking out of the fund. In 2025, we've got a significantly higher proportion of people taking benefits from the fund, and because of lower birth rates, and the population growth not being where it is, less people paying into the fund. So just again, another set of challenges. So, what are some resources that we can look to as we deal with preserving Social Security? One thing to take some security in is that AARP is going to always be fighting to protect Social Security. That is a lodestone, a cornerstone of why we are here. And we take that very seriously. So when there have been proposals to do things that threaten Social Security, AARP was right there saying no. Like in the early 90s, there was a proposal to privatize Social Security, just make it all private, like 401ks. And AARP was right there along with other advocates saying, don't you dare. This is a bad idea. And then that idea went by the wayside. Now that Social Security is facing challenges again, you're going to hear some people suggesting that maybe we need to privatize it and take the pressure off of federal management and all this other stuff. AARP will still say, and continues to say, that's a really bad idea. There are resources that you can find from the Council for Economic oh, I'm sorry, I can't even read the slide. And the American Academy of Actuaries. But for those of you who can see that slide, I think it says
Economic
economic.
education?
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Eleanor. So you can read up on your own about that if you want to. Other proposals or combinations of proposals to secure Social Security for the future. You can go to aarp.org/protect Social Security to get more information about what AARP is doing. And AARP has been, like I said, on the front lines in this year when there have been suggestions made. For example, there was a suggestion made not too long ago that maybe we have a back door to privatizing Social Security. AARP's response was immediate, saying, A, that what you're talking about isn't a backdoor, and B, a backdoor or any door to privatization is a non-starter. So no, we need to save the program that we have because we earned it. Here's another tool. Now, this tool applies only to those of us who are members of AARP, but we have something called a Your Questions Answered tool. And if you go to answers.aarp.org, you can use it. You need an aarp.org address, and which you can get as a member. You can pick your subject area, which would be Social Security, and type in your question. If your question happens to match our database of questions that people have already asked, you'll get an answer right away. If you ask a question that is not in our database, AARP staff will do the research and give you a personalized answer. It'll take a few days or maybe a week to get back your answer, but you will get back an answer to your specific question. Again, this is a benefit of membership in AARP. But if you go to aarp.org/protect Social Security, you can find all kinds of resources, articles, information about what's going on with Social Security. That's free to anyone, whether you have an AARP membership or not. So please take advantage of that. And, in your state, there may be Social Security like celebration events. Maryland's having one in Ocean City around the birthday of Social Security in mid-August. Virginia's having one, and other states are having them too. So go to them and talk to AARP staff about questions you may have about Social Security, or just learn about why this is something worth celebrating. So thank you so much. That concludes the webinar for today. There may be a survey that I'm not sure about, but
Yes.